Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines we have for you today. Charles Hoskinson in the news, NYDFS, Brad Garlinghouse, Stuart Alderoty at MainNet 2023. We got that and so much more. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, it's $1.11 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is down 0.2%, $27,158 and change for Bitcoin, $1,630.23 for Ethereum. Tether market cap is $83.2 billion plus at the moment, and we're 51 cents at XRP, and we're up 1.1 on the 24-hour and 6.9 on the 7-day. Let's get started. The markets are collapsing all around us, and you can't keep up with everything, but you can tonight. Private weekly live stream in the Digital Perspective Mastermind group. Incredible information we're going to go over there that we do not and sometimes cannot discuss on the channel. Make sure you get inside of there. Take advantage of the 3-day free trial. Don't treat your investment portfolio like a lottery winning. Prepare yourself to grow into the role you want for you and your family. Get the tools you need, the investor checklist, get the portfolio creation, private groups and courses, and the support from an incredible community. I tell you, some of the smartest people I've ever been around. Make sure you take advantage. Click the link and join us tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern inside. We'll see you there. We start with this right here, and it's important because Charles Hoskinson has just responded a day or two ago. He says, it can't be because my grand conspiracy comments were strictly about people from Ethereum bribing the SEC to go after Ripple. I've been brutally attacked, he says, for more than a year now about this topic, and the harassment never stops. Well, I'll tell you something. I have not seen any harassment, and I know I have nothing but mucho respect for Charles Hoskinson. And you know what? He blocked me. What does that say about him? I think he's using this terminology intentionally because he lacks the integrity to have a conversation. Is you are denying the facts that are not in dispute, Charles. That's what's going on here. And you lack the humility, and I say to this day, the integrity to actually curve what you said and to take it back because the facts are not in dispute. But that's okay, because we got a whistleblower now, and that whistleblower is going to tell us a lot more about what we've always speculated on that turns out to be factual these days. And you don't need a grand conspiracy, Charles. When interests converge, ETHgate, the facts are not in dispute. This isn't about bribes. This is about interest converging, otherwise known as collusion. Let old George Carlin straighten it out for you right here.
Created here in California, not as a result of a conspiracy, but because...
You don't need a formal conspiracy.
Right.
When interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies. There are now 3. It will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice. Right.
And there you have it right there. And I believe that is exactly what took place when they tried to work with the SEC to get a speech based on the Hinman test, right, that gave Ethereum a free pass and allowed them to create a monopoly, creating token project after token project in the tune of billions and billions of dollars. You want us to stop talking about it, Charles, because you were a CEO for 6 months involved in all of this, possibly? Well, then give us the same level playing field. Give us the same clarity. Give us the same advantage while you sit your ass on the bench. Then we'll talk about letting all of this go. How about that? That's not harassment. That's just a grown-up talking. And here we have even more information about Stephen Nerayoff here, who was thrown in a van and asked to name people in the crypto space from a list. Caitlin Long was one of those people on the list. John Deaton asked her to comment on this, and this was her response.
Let me ask you, you're talking about choke point 2.0. I have to ask you this because right now, and especially in the XRP community, and I got DMs asking me this, so I'm gonna throw this at you and ask you if you know anything or if you have a comment or you don't. But Stephen Nerayoff has made a claim that when he got arrested, he was thrown in a van and was demanded by the FBI to give up whatever information he had on a litany of people from, and you were on that list, and there were other people on the list, journalists on the list, such as Naomi Brockwell, a client of mine, Vitalik Buterin and others. And were you aware of that, or do you know anything about it?
I was not. I did not know anything about it until all that came out. And when I started looking into it, what I spotted was there were a lot of names on that list, and the press picked and chose a few that might be the best known, but there were a lot of names on that list. I knew nothing about it.
Okay. And so you really don't know anything about it?
Nope.
Okay.
And there we have it. So she doesn't know anything about it, but I bet it felt pretty alarming to find out your name was on such a list. Now let's take a look at this, because we know MainNet is happening today, and guess who comes out swinging? It's Brad Garlinghouse, and as soon as we can get the footage, we will bring it to you. But this is what's being said from MainNet stage here. Ripple's Brad Garlinghouse comes out swinging. Everything the SEC cares about, they lost. A freight train was driven through Gensler's arguments that these are all securities. Woo! Boy, do we like the sound of that. And then there's this. When you walk into the SEC building, they're not your friend. It's not a church. You don't have to bow down. Ripple's Stuart Alderoty on dealing with the current SEC administration. These are absolutely strong words being shared on stage at Masari MainNet 2023 right now. I absolutely love it. And then we see this also going on. We want to keep an eye on it. Shout out to Digital Chamber of Commerce for pointing this off here. This is Taylor Barr saying today the Financial Committee will mark up 3 CBDC bills. What are the bills? 1, the Power of Mint Act, sponsored by, you see them here, seeks to prohibit the Fed and the Treasury from issuing a CBDC. Number 2 is the CBDC Anti-Surveillance Act, sponsored by the Majority Whip. There, GOP Majority Whip seeks to prevent the Fed from issuing a CBDC directly to individuals. And number 3, the Digital Dollar Pilot Prevention Act, sponsored by Alex Mooney, seeks to stop the Fed from initiating pilot programs to test CBDCs without the approval from Congress. So you get the tone that's being set there. Beyond lawmakers, who's supporting Senator Warren's anti-crypto bill? Who's helping her grow her coalition? Well, here they are. Excuse me, right here. Here's a list of endorsements on the bill itself. So if you're looking for that, there it is right there. First, shout out to Taylor Barr and Digital Chamber of Commerce for providing that information there. And this is a very, very good thread. I covered in this morning's video the New York Department of Financial Services delisting XRP and what it could possibly mean. And it pertains to companies in New York. So it is not a wide thing. Ripple didn't lose a license. There's none of that, right? So this thread is very interesting. Wrath of Commons states here, what does it mean XRP was removed from the green list? Understanding XRP and the NYDFS, captivating thread about financial regulation in 7 tweets. And he says here, a New York bit license enables companies to engage in virtual currency business in New York, defined as buying, selling, or holding tokens, exchanging V4 fiat currency or other tokens. It says providing brokerage or trading, operating an exchange, providing wallets, issuing tokens here. Companies want the New York bit license for access to New York markets. In theory, the license protects New York financial structure and a test virtual currency companies have adequate capital reserves, strong security, AML, KYC. I know many will doubt this. Respond at the end, not here. He says here, New York DFS keeps a green list of tokens that are automatically approved for these licensed holders. It's short and almost all stable coins. XRP, Doge, and LTC were removed. And it says here, important companies can still use off-list tokens. Companies can still use off-list tokens, but it requires further vetting by New York and a separate Department of Financial Services approved coin listing policy in place. That is what we need right there. So XRP is not illegal in New York. It's just not an automatic go ahead for New York licensed companies that want to use it there. So you start speculating. So the removal totally affects companies that can't face the added rigor of applying for a license in New York while offering off-list tokens. I assume large companies trust banks, custody, and fintechs that deal in securities must pass a higher level of scrutiny anyways. Well, that is where it stops for me, because to me, that is exactly what I've been thinking about. I've leaned in ever since we saw this delisting business that the NYDFS delisting of XRP may not be a bad thing. It may point to bigger things. And that's why if you haven't seen this morning's video, I'm encouraging you to go watch it about XRP maybe becoming a stable coin right before our eyes. This is a quick clip, and I'm not going to play all of it here, but I just want to say that this is a rare interview from January 25 of 2022. We're not in 2025 yet. Bank of America Global Web3 Digital Asset Strategist, and they don't hear from him often, but take a listen to, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but listen.
More on the risks and benefits. Alkesh Shah, Bank of America Global Research, Head of Digital Asset Strategy. Alkesh, thanks so much for being here. So realistically, how far away are we from a digital dollar? Because the Fed just issued a paper on it, but they kicked it over to Congress, where, as you know, things can move slowly.
Yep. So it's not near term. There's some work to be done, especially to figure out considerations like privacy, the current banking system, how to make sure that liquidity is maintained in the banking system. We really think, even though we think a digital dollar is inevitable, that it's probably not till 2025 to 2030.
And then what are the key considerations before issuing a central bank digital currency or CBDC?
Sure. So I think one of the most important considerations that central banks around the world are working through, including the Federal Reserve, is privacy. So when you have a digital asset or a digital currency that runs on the blockchain, which is the underlying technology of these digital assets, all of the transactions are available to be seen. Now, in the case of a central bank digital currency like a digital dollar, it probably won't be open to everybody, but the government will be able to see it. And the government also needs to preserve the privacy of its citizens, or at least have a process where not just anybody can take a look at it, right? And so that is
the most important thing. And I go back to yesterday when we covered Christian Carlo, who has highlighted multiple times how important it is. He said, you don't be so concerned about the price value of a digital dollar. Be concerned about the values that make up the integrity of a digital dollar. This is extremely important. And for Bank of America's digital asset strategist to point to 2030 for a digital US dollar likely to be issued, we are now looking at staring down the barrel of a little more than a year from 2025. And to me, that is extremely exciting because I do believe that we are moving towards that ultimate goal. The question is will they get it right in the design of it? Because if they do, and they respect the Bill of Rights for everyone who uses it and holds it, and your right to privacy and the rest of it, you could create a demand for the digital US dollar that is even stronger than it is for the paper dollar today if done right. There's no question about that. Now, this here is a touch just very quickly here to close out. I did cover this morning. The reason I'm wondering if we could be watching XRP becoming a stable coin is because, one, Gary Gensler himself at MIT knows exactly that XRP is a stable value token bridge currency.
That in seconds it won't move as much. And the friction will be that you have to sell dollars to buy XRP and then sell XRP to buy peso, or you can interpose any bridge currency. One of the most significant opportunities for stable value tokens that we'll talk about in a few classes is maybe as what we can call it as a bridge currency for cross-border. That in seconds.
And there you have it. And then looking at the NYDFS that we pointed out and the delisting of XRP there, but knowing that it's not illegal and that other institutions that have a higher standard will want that access to use that, and they don't mind because banks live on that level of a higher prudential regulatory standard anyway. That's something to pay attention to. And speaking of that, very quickly here, for those who didn't see the video this morning, I'm going to point this out again. There are two categories essentially from the prudential requirements of the BIS, the Central Bank of Central Banks. And they point out that Group 1, Group 1A and Group 1B are either tokenized traditional assets or stabilization mechanism or stable coins. Well, if you think about the automated market makers and what creating those liquidity pools does and how it can help to alleviate and get rid of the slippage in price with the use of the liquidity pools and arbitrageurs looking to arbitrage price, you can create an extremely reliable tight trading range that some people would refer to as a stabilization mechanism. As you see here, stabilization mechanism here. That is a much different look to the way XRP operates today. Putting in those automated market makers may give it the qualification it needs to have that stabilization mechanism without actually pegging it to anything. Now, it's another conversation we could have about pegging the US dollar to XRP. That is a continued conversation. But I think if this turns out to be accurate here, and it does, the automated market makers being put into place on the XRP ledger does qualify XRP to fall in Group 1B, then you take it out of the high-risk Group 2 along with Bitcoin, and then it becomes an asset that looks a lot more desirable to the entire financial system. How about that? Not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.